Hi and welcome back to my channel. I am still struggling with trying to learn composition. So I just wanted to turn on the camera because I ran into some issues. But before I talk about that, remember the L shape where the idea about this was to leave this square here totally blank? Well, I did my version of the L shape here, and then I just thought that it looked so, I don't know, like scrapbook paper design, so I decided to draw in some of the woody guy, and then I had to peel off some of the papers from my new colors, and then instead of trashing it, I tried to make them into flowers. But now I actually broke the composition rule by adding stuff here, so now is a fun time to look at it, try and block out some of it and see if it was a mistake. Let me get a piece of paper. No paper. I'll just use an envelope and let me block out this guy here. Then I can see that it might have been given the whole view of it more calm. So I don't know. I don't know. I'm in doubt. I'm really testing out these composition models because I think it's interesting trying to put them into my work. And the one that I would like to learn is this one. I have no clue what it's called, but the shape of this star tip here reminds me of Star Trek. So I think that I will just refer to it as the Star Trek composition. You got like two reversed stars where these lines here are supposed to help you guiding your eyes into the table, and then the whole ground idea about leaving free space is this triangle up here. So I was thinking about following that example, and I'm working on this piece right here. It's almost a disaster, so I thought that I would turn on the camera and show my issues because hey, we all want to learn, right? I don't know if you can see, but behind the pattern paper I drew the line work on the paper so that I knew exactly where to place the pattern paper. So I placed this as my table surface, and then I got the background where I intend to gesso this triangle out here and push it back so I will get what the composition want me to do with get some space, right? Then I plan that I will have a figure and he will be standing below this diagonal line somehow. And then I have the line over here where below that I can also add in some action, or you know, something that you want to people to view at. So you can say that I still need these lines for placement of what else is going to happen on this journal spread, so that's why I haven't blocked out the background yet. The whole idea of making this journal spread is to remind me of another, you know, this book is all about tips and tricks, stuff that I pick up that I don't want to forget. So there is a tracing technique that I'm very fond of using, and I wanted to somehow be represented in this glue book of mine because I don't want to forget that technique. And the tracing technique is how to have a small reference photo, add some grid lines, and how to blow it up on a canvas. Yeah, some people are using a lot of ruler work where they convert the length of the reference photo into the length of the canvas. A lot of math involved right there, guys, so I just never thought that that was an easy way because when you're like really creative and the energy sparks you, you just want to get on sketching fast. So for me it's always been like an obstacle to be very meticulous with measuring the grids. So I have a technique that I wish I could give a shout out I don't know where it came from. It's just something that I picked up, and I wanted to be this journal spread about that technique. So all focus is going to do, all the focus on this page is going to guide towards what's going on right here with these two squares. There are different ways I can do it. I'm hoping that this composition will help me do it, because I can manipulate with a light source coming in from this angle here. And there is space enough here, so whatever Woody is doing here, his cast shadow will not be interfering with this canvas right here. But now the reason for why I'm turning on the camera. It was very easy to measure out the pattern paper for the table surface, and now I actually had to place something on top of it. And I can understand, I may have had it wrong, but I got a vantage point up here in the corner, so I kind of understand that whatever lays on this table must have, you know, it has to follow the perspective line born from the vantage point. So this sheet has to have this angle here, and then I just move the rulers to the top of the sheet, and that seems okay. You know, when I look at it, it seems possible that a table with this angular slant, when you place a piece of paper on top of it, it will have these perspective lines. Then comes the big one, the big sheet here, and that's where I messed up a ton, because to me it just seemed off that the canvas had to follow that line here, and then the top of the canvas had to be all the way over here. So at first I was drawing it and it just looked so off, and then I thought, how about just sketching in what I think it would be if it was just me and no line work, no rulers. And then I came to the conclusion that I would prefer that the canvas should have a corner here and then a corner here, so that it was lying like this. I don't know. But I'm determined to follow the technique about using the perspective lines to place my items on this table. So I had to correct it back to how it's going to be if I follow the rules. So now I am reluctantly continuing this drawing, even though I think it looks off. Oh yeah, but that's the thing about painting and sketching. You get blind. When first you get an idea, it's very difficult to divert from it, so you need that infamous tea break where you just leave the table and come back. Yeah. But let me try and work more about what's going to happen on this table, and then try and record bits and pieces so I can take you guys along with the progress of this journal spread. And whenever I run into an issue or a problem, I will turn on the camera and talk about it, because hey, I'm thinking maybe you guys actually think this is interesting. So see you in a bit. Okay, so this is going to be like a canvas that's got like a frame, so it's going to be risen up from the table, and this is a piece of paper. So in order to make that illusion, I'm working with the shadows, and it's kind of fun to realize that even the shadows follows the perspective line. So I just took from the vantage point and then tried to get that shadow to end all the way up here. So already now I think that I have learned something. Now I want to talk about why I like this grid so much. It is so awesome. Let me flip the journal so you might see it better. Can I do that without hitting the keyboard, I think? Okay. can you see that we got a reference photo down here? In real life, I would draw in the geometric grid. Starting with the diagonal lines from corner to corner. Then I would place a line that's like in the middle. So I think because the paper now is slanted, I need to measure out that this is the center of the paper. Otherwise I will get it wrong. And up here. When that's done, I will make a line in the center here too. Okay, it needs to be like really 90 degrees to get that line. So I got this ruler, this T ruler, and I'm just gonna place it on the edge of my table, on my edge of my sketchbook. And this is where it's strange, right? Because according to the ruler, it should be somewhat like this. Maybe it is. Can you hear how I am struggling with one side of the brain not fully giving into this, how the perspective lines are? Can you just sense it? When that's drawn, I will connect these points right here. All the way around. And now, as you can see, you can keep on building on this grid. You can have a line going through these crosses and through those crosses. So I think that I will do that. And then that line has to be parallel. And it's not. Yeah, it really throws me off. Maybe I should just use those lines to begin with. When you need to put this reference photos grid line up on a larger canvas, what you do is that you place your photo in the corner of your canvas, and then the direction of the diagonal line, you just carry it on up to your substrate. So you simply just use a ruler to carry it on, and now my substrate is a bit slanted, so I'm just gonna try and make it as best as I can. And it will be a little bit slanted because this canvas got height to it and the paper doesn't. The paper is lying flat on the table, so there is like ½ an inch height difference. But can you see how you just carried on that line up to the canvas? So now it's given that whatever you get from your grid that you're continuing to do on your big canvas, it's going to represent a similar space, a similar quadrant from the reference photo is going to be placed exactly on the canvas. Oh boy, I am so horrible at explaining this, but I have been very fond of using this way of tracing a grid from a reference photo that's so smaller than my substrate. And now I'm thinking that the line that's going to cross here should be following from the vantage point up in the corner. Oh man, I am really struggling having to do all these measurements in this drawing. I hope it pays out. I'm not sure that I will work like this every time, like every time I do something in the future, because I can feel that it's kind of draining my brain having to think so much. But I understand why the outcome looks, I don't want to use the word perfect, but if the perspective is, you have fiddled with it to make it fit, it will look nicer when you are done with your drawing. Instead of doing what I usually do, I just eyeball things and sketch. But this journal spread right here is just the proof of that my eyeballing is not good enough, because I have the canvas to have this size. So I'm kind of surprised how off I was, and what surprises me is that the size of this triangle that I would leave out is exactly the size of the triangle that I wanted to put in. So crazy math right there. But now I am almost relieved, because now I can visually look back at this illustration right here and remember that's how I did it when I wanted to cast the grid from a small reference photo up to a bigger substrate. So that's the important thing in this drawing. So now the rest of my job is to make sure that whatever I put on this spread is going to draw attention to these two sheets. So somehow I will try and work with tricks, light, contrast, shadow, elements, to make the interest stay on this table and not letting your eyes wander off on other places on this page, because there's a lot of places of distraction. There is this area here and this element area up here. So it's going to be fun for me to see how I can manipulate with contrast, light, and elements to draw the attention to this right here. Yeah. I must be sick in my head, since I think this is so funny. But I really do. Okay, I think I want to off-camera sketch in the guy, because I'm not that talkative today. So it would just be like 15 minutes of me not saying anything and then just drawing. So sorry for the skip in the video. Okay, so I draw a little bit more on this painting, and I added in some elements that would definitely draw my attention to the table and not the surrounding area. One of them is that dangling, dangerous pair of scissors on the edge of the table. That's like an old trick. Have you guys, when you're on a gallery or something and you watch oil paintings, especially with compositions where there is a table involved, like you know, those generic with fruits and wine and bread and cheese, then often beside the loaf of bread there is a knife where the shaft, the end of the knife, is dangerously dangling over the edge of the table. To me, it has that effect that I'm thinking, oh, that's dangerous, you know. And often the tool is colored in the color red, because red seems to be like the attention colors that we use in our society for objects that we want to draw attention to, like mailboxes and I don't know, can't even, yeah, fire trucks, you know. So I added in this pair of scissors dangling dangerously on the edge of the table with some highlights on the tips, hoping to draw eyes towards this one right here. And then I added in the generic dangerous bug. I've seen that effect in many paintings where they want a subtle attention to a certain place in their painting, then this bug thing appear, or something abstract that reminds you of a bug. So it's not like specifically a bug, but it has the shape of a cockroach or a spider or some kind of a bug. I don't know. And then for me personally, there are two things that really makes my OCD and my anxious level rise with peaks, and that is when I watch people lay down a juicy, unclean brush on a table surface. I mean, that is just annoying. Who does that, right? And then also resting a brush on top of a painting can. That's, oh my god. That's like really something that has been happening a lot in our, in my family life when we are, maintaining woodwork outside on the house or something like that. Then often a brush is put to rest like this, and then it almost always drops down. So just the fact that this one has been slurping down some paint, and this is like wet paint, hopefully makes combined with the composition is it called, attention marks down to this page, this section of the page down here. And then I also was looking at the, can we call it like composition line work, where you had like the diagonal line work. So I tried to use the line work as guidance for the Woody's arms, and then I also used rulers to point at this particular point right here, and it actually has a highlight. I don't think it shows that well on the stream because I got like really light contrast going on, but there is highlight at the end of the canvas, the reference picture, and the rulers kind of point your attention towards this area right there. But I don't know if you guys recall that I was talking earlier on earlier streams about that I would like to put more contrast into my paintings. So I did a journal spread about I had to remind myself to use more contrast. So cropping, I think, is being maintained by being more aware of the composition and where you want things to be placed. And then the next issue for me is the contrast. So I did deliberately use a lot of contrast when I made the train station. Contrast to me is not only to use a darker value when you sketch things, it's also to manipulate with shadows. So here I managed to have like shadow lines from that box here, his shadow, like just shadow in general. So I think that another example is this person here, where the light is coming from this angle and you got this soft color hue over here and then a cool color in the shadow area. So the contrast here is this warm tone with the cool tone. So I'm thinking, of course, the last step for this drawing would be to add in some contrast with some shadow colors, and then make sure to carve out the V-shaped white space that this composition should benefit from. And I'm thinking that I could go like I did with the ballerina, like a warm tone here and a cool tone here, but for the sake of it, just to twitch things up, I'm thinking about why not go in with a violet shadow tone on the edges and then kind of frame in the journal spread. So I'm taking a fan brush and then I am using watercolors. In this case, this is my M-gram watercolors. Yeah, I just think that the fan brush may help me coat it, you know, like spread it out faster, and then when I sweep up the brush like this, I will have an edge that is a little bit blurry compared to if I had used like a triangle watercolor brush. Then I used the triangle watercolor brush for the train station shadows because it needed to carve out a particular sharp edge, because the opposite train would cast that to the whole station. But here, where I want to like have a subtle edge to my shadows, I'm thinking that the fan brush may give me that. I know that contrast for like really professional painters and stuff is about putting in a darker tone than your mid value to make your object seems 3D. But since this is my workbook, I translate contrast into also being with working with shadows. So, but I did get some thumbs down, and I think it's because I forget to yell out disclaimers like I don't pretend to be a teacher right now with these uploads. I'm simply just sharing what's going on in my end of the world right now. So maybe I should come with that kind of disclaimer right now too, also, that whatever I say is my take on things, my observations, and people are different, so we cling differently to stuff that we hear and see and translate it into our own world differently. So heck, I may be wrong with a lot of things, so don't take this kind of upload from me as some sort of how to do it kind of thing. I don't want to appear like that, you know, and I get super sad because I am one of those persons who is watching at YouTube statistics to see if my uploads are creating any interest to the people who are subscribing to my channel. So if one kind of video is doing bad with few thumbs up, then I will not, you know, waste you guys' time with more of that kind. So yes, a thumbs down really matters, because the only tool I have to see if what I'm doing on my channel have any interest is I look at the amount of views, and then thumbs ups or thumbs downs. So that's why I'm really like, oh no, when I get a thumb down on something, I totally translate that into like, don't be a smart ass, you know, sounding like you have something to teach people if you don't. And I really want to just talk about this issue because, yeah. Okay, I'm trying to frame in with the violet hue some of the pages, and now I have to work on the, by the way, shading in with some contrast may help me carve out the highlight I got on the pair of scissors. So I should go like really darker on that part right there. But look how easy it is with the fan brush to just brush out the color. into like a seamless transition. I need to work on the shadows on the woodies. I really need to name them. The size of the shadows are a little bit small compared to the size of the work table. I'm not so much worried about compared to the size of the canvas, because it is realistic that a person this size would work on a canvas this size. I'm more worried about the work table, right? So, because this is just for my sketchbook, I'm just gonna leave it. But definitely, if I made a painting and this was like the end result, I would be a little bit worried about how small these people are compared to the size of the table. But yeah, this is this could be like a kid, like a grandkid visiting and sitting at the cutting table. I'm trying to tell myself so that they would appear more natural size. But good Lord, could you imagine if we had such a huge workspace like this table is? It feels funky to work with this slanted shadow color. I can definitely tell that I'm not used to having that slanted composition to things. It kind of throws me off a little bit, especially when having to do these shadows. Okay, so maybe I should stop working more on those shadows, because suddenly I will do something that will just be a wrong line work from the brush, and it will just annoy me. A little bit more dark purple down here would suit it. So I'm trying to mix it in some of the dioxazine purple into the violet palette. And to level it off, doing the same on this edge down here. But so far, this is kind of my take to the page. I'm looking at it in the screen. Yeah, I emphasize the line right here, because that is what's worth to take from the technique, that you start with that line and then transfer it over to a bigger substrate. And once you got that cut line there, it's so easy to build the rest of the grid. And like I mentioned, if the spaces in the grid are too huge because the substrate is like larger than your photo, you can totally go in with more lines, you know, just dividing up the diamond shapes. So yeah. Job is done. I really like the way that you have like this V shape of bright space. I think it's nice. Yeah, that's the word. It's kind of nice to work like that. I don't think that I ever would have chosen that if I haven't been doing this in this journal, because when have I ever made a V-shaped light space? Because light is always coming from one source, you know, so why would this one be so V-shaped if light is coming from here? But I can kind of see how it's the contrast is hugging the center point, like embracing it, and it tells your eyes not to have focus on the elements that could be a little bit disturbing, so it pushes it back where it belongs and don't become like a confusing piece to look at where you don't really know what the heck is the focal point. So yeah. Thanks for watching. I know these are like long streams, but at least I'm taking you with me on my journey. So have a nice weekend. Bye bye.